Greetings, this is the man who pretends to be Charles Darwin. Actually, I'm the author Stanley A. Rice, and my most recent book is called Forgotten Landscapes, and the subtitle is How Native Americans Created Pre-Columbian North America and What We Can Learn from It. Now, how did Native Americans create the landscape? One of the processes that they did that by was hunting. And one of the prey animals that they hunted was the passenger pigeon. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about passenger pigeons. Now, the original Charles Darwin could talk your ear off about regular pigeons because they have a lot of genetic variation. No two of them look alike. And that genetic variation was the basis of natural selection and therefore of evolution. And but I'm not going to talk to you about domesticated pigeons, which is what Darwin studied and raised, and dovecots, but I'm going to talk to you about the passenger pigeon, which looked more like a dove. Now, the passenger pigeon, there were billions, that's billions with a B, of passenger pigeons in North America. And they could form flocks of 200 or 300 million. And when a flock would fly overhead, it would be like day turning to night, and anyone caught under that flock would report being rained upon by pigeon droppings. Now, that's an experience that none of us will ever have because starting about 1850, then the passenger pigeon populations began to go into decline, and by 1914, the last one was dead. So we will never see these kinds of passenger pigeon flocks. But a flock of 200 or 300 million would fly past for several days at a time. That's almost unbelievable. And when we, of course, the people who saw that and those of us who have read about it later just assumed that's the way things had always been. But I don't think that was necessarily true. That doesn't sound right to me. Yes, in fact, there were huge populations of passenger pigeons, but were there huge populations thousands of years into the past? 9,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, were there still that many passenger pigeons? It seems incredible that that many passenger pigeons for that long a time could have gotten enough food to eat. Now, passenger pigeons lived mostly in forests rather than in the open, but there were lots of different kinds of foods that they could eat, lots of different kinds of nuts and berries, and also other kinds of seeds, but animals as well, grubs and worms they could eat. So there was no shortage of the types of foods that they would eat, but it seems like they would have depleted their food supply if there were billions of them for thousands of years. Now, I have seen no evidence that passenger pigeon populations were so huge prior to, let's say, 1700, 1600. Now, there is evidence of it after that time, of course, but before that time, there isn't any evidence of it. We know that Native Americans hunted passenger pigeons, and so I would like to suggest to you that that is what kept passenger pigeon populations under control, was Native American hunting. And it was usually the little boys that would hunt the passenger pigeons because passenger pigeons were safe and easy to hunt. And so the little boys could catch pigeons and take them home and feel good about adding to the food supply of their village, even while their fathers were off hunting big game, such as deer. And so passenger pigeons were hunted by Native Americans, but also by lots of other predator species. But there was only one predator species that suffered a massive population decline after about the year 1500, and that was Native Americans as a result of exposure to European diseases. 90% of Native Americans died from these diseases. And so the population of passenger pigeons we saw after that time was a population explosion because of the death of their major predator, Native Americans. Now, I make the case in chapter 3 of my book that it was the Native American hunting that kept populations in check, and I do a few simple calculations to show that with 10% of the population being hunted, then the pigeon population would have stayed the same. But without that hunting, then it would only have taken about 87 years for the pigeon population to go from 300,000 up to 1 billion. You can do the calculations yourself. But Anyway, it appears that that is one of the major ways in which Native Americans influenced the landscape of North America, because passenger pigeons, after about 1600 or 1700, had a major impact on the landscape of North America. And the reason they didn't before that was because of Native American hunting. This is The Man Who Pretends to be Charles Darwin, the author Stanley A. Rice. Tally ho and amen.